27-20, USC emerges the victor. You were high on USC coming into this game.
I was, and in the fall. Like, I was pretty low on them earlier on, but then when I sort of considered the totality of the transfers on defense and the new coaches on defense, I was like, look, this is everything, right? If this doesn't work for Lincoln Riley, it's not working for Lincoln Riley at USC. So there was that emotional element of like, this is a kitchen sink situation for the Trojans. So coming into this game, I felt decent about them. This was, what do we say about Nick Saban? That like, you don't want to be the guy after the guy?
Yeah.
It turns out in this game, being the guy after the guy, whether it was after Jaden Daniels or after Caleb Williams, pretty decent place to be given these situations.
I think that's fair. So what were your impressions in watching this game, and how did it compare to your impressions going into this game?
Okay, I mean, immediately I was impressed with USC's defense. Immediately the job Danton Lynn did, and seeing how pressure worked, seeing how pressure didn't work, seeing USC sort of shadow and pick up on what LSU was trying to do on offense, and not always successfully, but like they had a concept, they had a guy there, right? And that guy there, whether it was Macarenas Arnold, the linebacker, or Ramsey, the safety who came in from UCLA, like they had cardinal and gold jerseys where they were supposed to be on defense, and they were like hitting hard. Like, that was the immediate thing that I wanted to see from this game. I also wanted to see it on the other side from LSU, but I thought the starting point from a talent standpoint from LSU's defense, especially up front, was in a better place, right? When Harold Perkins is there, when all these guys are there that we know can be disruptive. I was more curious about USC's defense. And then just the impression of both of these quarterbacks, just especially in that first half, like really strong command, right? That they weren't trying to play outside of themselves, but they weren't dinking and dunking, right? They were taking chances downfield. There was a comfort and there was I think a boldness to both of these quarterbacks. Like, they came out both crazy impressive, which with what LSU lost at receiver, cool to see, and with what USC should be doing, giving the receiver talent that they have, impressive to see. So just all around, like, quality would be the word I would use to describe what I saw. Hey, real quick, it'd be great if you could consider subscribing to the YouTube channel down below. It really helps us out.
If I'm a USC fan right now, I'm thrilled.
Yeah, of course.
I'm thrilled. Not just for the win, but because this was essentially a 2-question test on Sunday night against LSU, and they passed it with flying colors. The first question was the defense. Can they be better? Can they look better? The answer to that was absolutely yes. Now, they gave up over 400 yards, okay?
Sure.
My favorite reference, they're not the 85 Bears.
They bent.
They
limited the breakage.
They did bend. But the energy, the effort, the things that you can't necessarily quantify definitely look better. The tackling was a lot better. Compared to a year ago, it was like night and day. So they were good in that respect. And I always say another measure of effort is red zone.
Oh, man, that 4th down stop early?
This team was terrible a year ago in the red zone. This season, starting off against LSU, good offense. Look better. Look better. If that is a measure of effort, if that is part of what ailed USC from a defensive standpoint a year ago, and many years before that, that all seemed better to me. Again, I reemphasize, just marginally better this year.
Yeah.
Just marginally better. We say this every year about a Lincoln Riley team. If they're just marginally better. And if the offense, by the way, I'll build on this in a second. If the offense remains somewhat close to the same as they were a year ago, USC is going to blow past every projection that people had for them this season.
I think that's right.
And
that proper overreaction. Yeah.
And then the second question, I said it's a 2-question test, was offense.
Yeah.
Specifically quarterback, which you mentioned. Miller Moss, who I feel like I underplayed his abilities because we hadn't seen a whole lot of him. We saw him in mop-up duty.
Spring games, yeah.
And when we talked about him on this show, and I'm kind of pointing the finger at myself here, I was treating him as the guy that they were going to go to by default. You lose Caleb Williams, there's going to be something of a step back.
Right.
Is it Miller Moss? Is it Jaden Maava? We've got options there, but they're just going to go with the guy who they've had, and it's just like a backup who's being promoted. They don't have somebody better, so this is their full stop, man. He was good. He was good. He was calm back there. He knew where to go with the football. It was clear he knew the plays. When he had to throw and put the ball in a spot, He was throwing dimes. To your point, they weren't afraid to stretch the field. I just thought this was really solid. I thought he showed arm talent. I thought this was an incredibly clean game. And if you're a USC fan, again, this is all very positive because taking the step back from Caleb to now Miller Moss, who knew? Not the best defense in the world. Brian Kelly, we can talk about Brian Kelly in a second.
Yep.
I think Brian Kelly knows as much. But yeah, for a first glimpse of a new quarterback and a new defense, I don't know what more you could possibly want if you're a USC fan. This was a really, really strong showing in week 1.
No, in an uncomfortable place, not because it was they're not playing at Death Valley, they're not playing at LSU, but like it's uncomfortable because it's not a normal type setup, playing in an NFL stadium in Vegas. It's just, visually different. The vibes are different playing in a stadium like that. And it's true for both teams, of course, but LSU has played in more of these games recently. In these types of stadiums, these players are a little bit, it seems, more familiar. Brian Kelly has played in these games more recently. It seems. Who knows? But yeah, the other thing with USC is offensive line wasn't great. The LSU defensive front really manhandled them a bunch, and Miller Moss was able to get the ball out quickly, right? He took some shots. He had a couple of those in the second half. Those balls batted him to the air that looked, floated dangerously down, or I think one of them got technically picked off but stripped right away.
Right.
USC was able to benefit from a couple of extremely close calls with the inside of their offensive line struggling against LSU. And so I don't know how many times USC actually wins this game if it's simulated 100 times, but the one that was played Sunday night worked out pretty well for the Trojans. And one of the big reasons why, man, that receiving core. We talked about it a little bit. To me, when you look at what's Lake McCree at tight end, Deuce Robinson is at receiver, but sort of a hybrid size-wise because he's 6'6" and a bigger receiver. Jacoby Lane is a big body. Zachariah Branch smaller. Kyron Hudson smaller. But like those 3 or 4 big receivers, I get a little bit of the like early 20-teens Stanford vibes, right? Where you're just like, they have 4 dudes that are 6'4" and above on the field at the same time. Your Arthega Whitesides, right? Your Kobe Fleeners. There was something about that where you're just like, they're going to body up some teams. They're going to post teams up. Like Lincoln Riley is smart enough to know this, whether it's the red zone, whether it's a 3rd and 7, whatever. And you saw LSU struggle. You saw those receivers make those big plays going up, right? One-handed, whatever, in traffic. They're going to be a problem for a lot of teams. And the change of pace with Zachariah Branch, still worried about this offensive line. Again, just pushed around for a lot of this game. I think that's still a big question. And they won't play defensive fronts that looks like LSU's all season long. It won't be an every week thing. But came away super impressed with Miller Moss' composure, leading that last second game-winning drive. Woody Marks, by the way, tough runner.
Look good.
For USC, gives them a nice option, had the game-winning run in, but got some tough yards, some big plays and big moments. So, again, maybe they only win this game, 68 times out of 100, but they look like they were better prepared. They're certainly more disciplined with the penalties and the targeting at the end that LSU had, the penalty after a touchdown LSU had. Like, it just seemed like the USC players, were better prepared to have cool heads and not let something else dictate this game, as I'm sure Brian Kelly was alluding to in his presser after. I think you actually have the audio as a transition if you want.
Yeah, I have the sweet setup Iceman. I'll get to that in a second. The only other point on USC, maybe I am dooming my Fighting Irish by saying this, but
yeah, it's a long time until that game, right?
Long time till this game. This game's at the end of the year. As of now, after week 1, I am thrilled as a Notre Dame fan because, and I talked about this. This is going to be the argument that people make against Notre Dame because the schedule is very beneficial.
Already have.
It looked that way on paper. It looked like you get past A&M, and then it is pretty much smooth sailing. There's a Florida State game in there, but that one's at home as we get into November. Florida State's already 0-1. We'll see what they do tonight. Again, we're recording this on Labor Day. The USC game is on the road. It's the last game of the year. The kind of, I guess, setup for that game that we discussed in the preseason was, well, they're over under 7.5. There are all these questions. The defense might not be any better, et cetera, et cetera. Suddenly now, USC throws its hat in the ring, not just as like a contender in the Big Ten, but also somebody that's more relevant on the national level and definitely serves to benefit Notre Dame's strength of schedule.
By the way, I understand why you did it, Ty. It's a totally defensible thing you just did. But shout out to you for taking this result and saying, how can I make it about my team?
That's what we do. That's what,
how can I make it about Notre Dame?
Is that not what everybody does?
It is absolutely the most real college football reaction. But what does this do for me?
This is a tribal sport. You love who you love.
No, totally acceptable, but I always enjoy it. And I probably would have done the same if Oregon were playing USC this year, which I don't believe they are. Other side, LSU.
Other side. So if this is a show about honesty, this was the most honest post-game presser I have ever seen from Brian Kelly. Ever. And I have watched so many of these hollow kind of manufactured quotes from him over the years, dating back to his time at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
This was pure, this was unadulterated frustration.
How could the players do this to Brian Kelly? Was this sort of theme of it?
This was pure, unadulterated frustration.
Yeah.
More so than I can ever remember seeing from him in the past. There is a snippet making the rounds on social media. I do have the audio here. I'm going to play it. It's like 20 seconds long or so. And let's talk about this and more kind of on the flip side.
We had some guys played their butts off tonight, and we're sitting here again. We're sitting here again talking about the same things, about not finishing when you have an opponent in a position to put them away. But what we're doing on the sideline is feeling like the game's over.
So that thud you heard about 5 seconds in was him slamming a table.
Yeah.
It's clear he's not faking this. He was frustrated. BK felt like this one was there for LSU. And I think it's a fair assumption. He felt like they gave it away. And he was angry about three things in particular. The first was penalties. You talked about the targeting.
Yeah.
But there were 2 personal foul penalties in this game that set up points for USC. That stuff does not help. They were sloppy on that front. The second was red zone offense. We talk about the red zone defense for USC. Obviously, BK sees it from his perspective as leaving points out there, settling for field goals in close games, putting a strain on a defense that, in his words, not mine, was not ready to carry that type of burden for an offense that wasn't executing. And then the third, the reason why he slammed the desk was, in effect, killer instinct, not putting USC away when he felt like they had some momentum. So if I'm an LSU fan now, I understand feeling frustrated, and I think the emotions that Kelly spoke to are probably very real right now among the message boarders and across LSU Twitter and whatnot. What I would say, though, is I don't think you should feel surprised by what you saw, because this was an offense that lost a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, that lost Malik Neighbors, was 79th in returning production on that side of the ball, even with a veteran quarterback, Dan. Garrett Nussmeier, who for his own right was not terrible, right? Was fine.
Been around for a while,
But
I thought he was really good, to be honest.
But even with that, it should not come as a great shock that you're going to get an incomplete performance in week 1 with so much turnover. And again, on the defensive side, right? This defense was full on bad a year ago. Yeah. They went out, they paid Blake Baker a ton of money to come in and try and solve that problem. Kelly's right. They're probably not at the point yet where they can lean on that defense, but I did think there was some improvement there. I thought, generally speaking, and he spoke to this as well in the presser, it seemed like they were better at tackling. They competed on the edges more. There were definite
the arms
there.
and passing lanes, right? That like was Savion Jones and Whit Weeks were making plays all over the field. It was great. Harold Perkins was making plays.
There were definite signs there that the effort level, that the production is going to improve this season. But again, I don't think this should come as a great shock. I would say bigger picture, try to avoid the freak out, because recruiting is still really good. They're evolving the way that they use the portal. It's going to be fine in the long run.
Right.
And they've got 6 weeks to work out the kinks before the schedule really heats up in week 7 with Ole Miss coming to town, and then it starts rolling downhill. So my general thought here is it was there for LSU. They definitely committed some big-time mistakes. I do think it will get better. I came away generally impressed with both teams, feeling like both are headed in a good direction, especially USC in 2024.
Yeah, I wouldn't surprise me at all if we're in mid-October and talking about LSU as like good thing USC didn't get LSU in week 7 kind of thing, right?
Exactly. My thoughts exactly.
And you know what? maybe it's a good thing LSU didn't get USC in week 7, right? Maybe the offensive line comes together a little bit more. Miller Moss is going to be nothing but more comfortable in this offense as like the guy by then as well. Yeah. But LSU's, to me, just because of how disruptive that defensive line can be and will be this year, I could see this LSU defense sort of morphing into something consistently scary this year. And the offense as well, right? Like the best of Kyron Lacey, the best of John Emery last night with explosion plays. Like there are new faces who are going to be counted on, like the new starters, the new presumed stars or whatever. These guys are guys who've contributed for a while. But no, I think this is going to be a tale of two teams who are really going to continue to grow.
A lot of playmakers on both sides. We saw that playmaking ability. It was a good game. It was a good game to watch. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.